Hello again, this is Professor Zafari, and in this lesson, let's talk about the main concepts that underwrite ancient Greek art and philosophy. That concept is classicism. Let's look at it in more detail and let's analyze how we can see this ideology in the architecture, sculpture, and philosophy of the ancient Greeks. And we're going to conclude this learning unit by looking at a specific work of the philosopher Plato's writings. We're going to explore and analyze his allegory of the cave. So to get started, let's understand the context, the understanding of the ancient Greeks and how they looked at the world. So for the ancient Greeks, the world is a very fascinating place. They were very much intellectuals, they were very much explorers. As you've read in your textbook, there's so many different branches and types of philosophers that are trying to define the world and explain it. And from their perspective, they see this world that is constantly changing. And there's forces of destruction such as storms and floods. And there's also forces of progress and improvement, such as the human spirit and nature, for example, spring and bringing new life and new development. So for the Greeks, then, the ideal for life becomes this concept of balance. Balance, then, is the idea. And if we want to achieve perfection, it's through balance. Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, argues that this also applies to human happiness, that the key to personal happiness is balance. So this concept of balance becomes very profound. And the ideology that develops, we now call classicism. And we're not using the word classic as we tend to in our everyday speech when we refer to something that is beyond a trend or something that a type of music or a fashion that's not very trendy, that's something that's more timeless. We're really referring to a specific ideology here. So classicism is an ideology that we associate with the ancient Greeks. And first and foremost, it includes this idea of contemplating the physical universe. We want to explore and we want to investigate and observe the world around us. And included in this idea is that the universe is designed and governed by a definitive set of laws. The world seems chaotic and it seems like everything is accidental, perhaps. But for the ancient Greeks, there is an underwriting set of laws. It is simply our human task to discover those laws and to define them. So there's a belief that the physical world, as well as the metaphysical world, that world that is not tangible, the world of abstract concepts such as beauty and truth, that this belief, then, that balance is the overriding idea of perfection applies to both worlds, the physical world as well as the metaphysical world, and it's the basis for the philosophies and art during this era. So let's take a look at some examples and examine this principle. Right now it seems perhaps rather vague and abstract, but when we look at some examples it should make more sense. So in this idea of classicism, that the idea and the definition of perfection is based on balance, then it also comes to play that reason, this human faculty of reason that we employ, and mathematics are both the key tools in which we can understand our universe and define those underlying laws. Proportion is also significant, and we can see this especially in architecture, like in this image here, having the same measurement between columns, having a precise proportion between the width, the base of the column and the height of the column. Proportion is very much tied into this idea of balance. And within this concept as well, and perhaps the most significant characteristic of classicism, is this strong belief in human beings' ability to exert their influence over the physical and metaphysical realms. For the ancient Greeks, the whole concept and the whole belief that there are these underlying laws in the universe is significant, but what's more significant to them is this belief that human beings have the ability to discover those laws. Human beings have the ability to observe and to define those laws and to fully grasp them. So there's a lot of celebration in human beings' potential and ability that I think you'll see in classicism. And that's one of the main reasons that this ideology has become such a key concept in our Western culture. We still have this belief that human beings are able to change the world and to change themselves, and that human beings have a very significant potential. It's still a belief that our culture has today. So this is all based on the ancient Greeks' idea of classicism. So if we want to try to give just the main principles of classicism, we would definitely have to use the word exactitude. We're looking for precision, we're looking for proportion, we're looking for aestheticism. Aestheticism is the concept that we can achieve beauty, that we should seek to achieve beauty, that human beings are capable of creating beauty, of understanding and appreciating beauty. So classicism incorporates all of these concepts. So one of the most evident means in which we can explore classicism is in architecture. We can really see that the pursuit of perfection governed the designs of the ancient Greeks' architecture. We see the columns are arranged with symmetry and with balance, and we see that the temples that are reflecting the ancient Greeks' religious beliefs are also portraying the symmetry and the beauty that the ancient Greeks emphasize in classicism. So here in this temple we can see it very clearly. There's the proportion, there is the symmetry between the columns, all very much characteristic of classicism. And in the three orders, Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian of Greek architecture, we can see those developments as well. Your textbook covers these three distinct orders. Here's an image that shows the development, how the columns, the orders, become more ornate as time goes by. What we see in classical Greek sculpture is the same desire to achieve precision, but what we can also see now is the classical emphasis on human potential. We can see that there is this desire by the sculptor to bring into being, to create what the mind has conceived and to make it possible in the physical realm. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. What we're going to see in a couple of examples, and we can see two of them here, is this emphasis of the Greeks' idea on human perfection. In almost every single Greek sculpture, you will see that it is an idealized view of the perfect human body that is presented. In addition, we see as well the principles of balance, and we're also trying to say in these depictions of perfection that it is not only a perfection of the human body, but it's also an allusion to a perfection of the mind. So here we have a very famous classical Greek sculpture, the discus thrower. Let's analyze it for a moment to see what characteristics of classicism are evident in this work. First and foremost, let's look at its composition. Clearly, it's not a symmetrical sculpture. If it was symmetrical, we could take a line and draw down the center and the two sides would mirror each other. That's not the case. So it's not perfectly symmetrical, but is it balanced? For the ancient Greeks, they would say yes, there is a balance. You have the two legs that are over here towards the right, but then you have them balanced by this arm up here. And if we wanted to draw a diagonal line from from the wrist here through the hip to the wrist up here, there's almost a straight line. So there's still an emphasis on balance, despite the fact that this is not a perfectly symmetrical sculpture. Another aspect of the sculpture that portrays classicism is this emphasis on perfection. Check out the six-pack, the pectoral muscles and the abdominal muscles, and the fact that we see a very athletic human form here portrays that classical emphasis on perfection. What we can also see too is this really intense, focused mind and facial expression on this character. There's an emphasis on reason here. There's an emphasis on the human ability to master not only the physical world, but also his internal world, the metaphysical world, and his own mind. So we have this very determined look on the character's face. The mouth is set, the eyes are focused. So we see that classical characteristic of emphasizing human reason and very much emphasizing human potential. What's really interesting about this sculpture is that the sculptor chose to capture a moment in which the discus thrower is wound. He's ready to throw the disc. We see his whole body is tensed. These muscles are all tensed. He has his arm back fully extended. The leg is tense. This arm is offering some balance to allow for that full extension of the arm. So the sculptor doesn't capture the figure in the midst of his throw. He doesn't capture the figure right after his throw. He's capturing this figure all wound and ready to throw the disc. So it's a really powerful capture of human potential, what this person is going to be capable of. And it's a larger commentary on human beings, that human beings have this great inherent potential. A really strong and potent statement that classicism makes. The idea of classicism, as I said, is not one that fades away, and we're giving it special attention in this lesson because it is a significant ideology in the development of Western culture. Later on, we don't call it classicism, but during the Renaissance we use the term humanism. And really the two words are synonyms. But when the Italian Renaissance figures started discovering for themselves the works of Plato and Aristotle, they had this fascination with the work of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. And they felt that these works can give valuable lessons and valuable instruction on how to live a moral life and how to lead an effective life. And we're going to see some tension when we talk about the Renaissance. There's tension with the Christian church over this. The church felt that these thinkers and philosophers were choosing the philosophy of the ancient Greeks over the philosophy of the Christian church. But the Renaissance humanists are going to very much uphold the same ideas as the ancient Greeks did in classicism. They're going to emphasize precision, proportion, reason, and most of all, human potential. So the last thing we want to discuss in this lesson is Plato. Plato is one of the most essential and one of the most influential philosophers of Western culture. And we want to take a look at one significant piece of writing from him and analyze it. He gives us an allegory in his attempt to explain to us that truth exists in another eternal, unchanging realm, and in his desire to express to us that reason is the only means that we can use to discover truth. Plato gives us an allegory. He gives us this story in which we can see these lessons he's trying to present to us. So the next page in your learning unit is to read Plato's allegory of the cave. And I hope this video helps clarify classicism and gives you an overriding idea of how the different arts all connected through this main ideology called classicism.